What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Luminary Grand, and today we're going to be going over My Hero Academia chapters 377 to 380. And a lot's happened since our last update. In the last update, we were leaving off with Toga hitting the battlefield and starting the Sadman's parade. All for One and Hawks got into an encounter. Kurogiri, President Mike, and Aizawa all met up, and Deku is still having a standoff with Shigaraki. So the heroes are in a really bad spot. Let's just jump right into it. Start the chapter off with Cherry Blossom Tree. In the background, you hear characters saying, "As the heroes wither, the villains thrive." Due to the gap in power, achieving victory through standard tactics was as unlikely as grabbing hold of a fleeting thread. Instead, the heroes strategized to divide their foe and claim the advantage, but a raging tempest began to blow. Then we're snapped back to the UA Fortress, where we left off with Kurogiri's portal opening and President Mike appearing on the UA Fortress right behind Eraserhead. Eraserhead then takes his eye off of Shigaraki All For One and says, "Yamada." That means, as we then see Twice come through Kurogiri's portal and he starts to multiply. Then Manuel and Aizawa get tackled to the ground, along with Monoma, by the Twice clones. So now Monoma and Aizawa have both taken their eyes off of Shigaraki All For One. And in the next panel, we can see the results of that, where Shigaraki All For One molts his body and the majority of the UA Fortress starts to explode. On the inside, we can see that the heroes that are below the UA Fortress start to panic, saying that we've lost power in one of the lines. They then say, "I can't pop a spare. The corners we cut for the rush job are coming back to bite us." Mandalay then sends out a message saying, "We've lost flight control," as Momo then looks shocked. In the next panel, we see Skeptic, who seems very excited about the UA forces losing its defenses. He says, "At last, I'm in. Prepare for your downfall, heroes. What's more, the Control Center Island is under attack. The Phantom Thief is unable to perform his role," and by Phantom Thief, I believe that he's referencing Midoriya because he came out of nowhere. He then says that Eraser is no longer active. The deadliest villain of all is about to be unleashed. Once UA falls, no, all of Japan, the entire world, will be destroyed by his hands. Deku then yells out and says, "It's Kurogiri. What happened to the Central Hospital?" As he and Shigaraki then look at each other, Deku says, "What's tearing apart? Is he shedding his skin? He's not moving." Shigaraki then speaks, saying, "What if I told you that it's me here now? What would you want to do? Sit down and chat like at the mall? Ain't happening, hero. After all, I am your villain." And then Deku states to himself, "That's the Shigaraki persona." We then cut back to Skeptic muttering to himself, saying, "Naturally, UA systems were doomed to fall by my skill. Even the subterranean evacuation system is putty in my hands now. The ignorant masses and the heroes who cling to the old ways will perish in the name of the liberation." Deku then thinks to himself, saying, "If the school comes crashing down, Yajirozu and everyone else below is doomed. I've got to keep UA in the air somehow. I also need to keep my eyes on Kurogiri so that Shigaraki doesn't escape. It's all too much. I can't breathe. I need air," as he starts to panic. He then goes down on one knee, saying, "The blowback from the power of the gear shift. When my cells don't get a second to rest, my body can't produce oxygen." As the second user, One For All, appears, saying, "I said you can't fall just yet. However, there may be a silver lining in this dark cloud. All For One is having serious problems keeping those identities unified. Those of us within One For All resonate with All For One, so we can peer into each other's inner working. At this moment, it seems that he's in no position to manipulate the flesh he possesses. Do whatever it takes to make your body act even 1 second faster. The chain of events leading to this moment will be your power." As then, on one of Skeptic's screen, we see someone says, "Found you. It took a while, but you finally showed yourself. Hunting you down was no walk in the park." As Skeptic looks confused, saying, "Huh?" As then we see Labrava typing up a storm, saying, "But nothing's too much for me, cause all of this is for Gentle's sake." Interesting, the heroes seem to have made an alliance with her. She says it's for Gentle's sake, so I assume that the heroes have come to terms with Gentle Criminal, so that way he can work work alongside them. I mean, with their forces dwindling, they have to reach out to any and everybody. So not surprised, but I will say that I didn't expect La Brava to be the answer for Skeptic. Up to this point, it really just seemed like Skeptic was trying to get into the framework of UA. Other than that, their firewalls in the beginning were pretty decent. I am curious of where Aizawa Kurogiri and President Mike are gonna go. I'm not really sure what's gonna happen with that. Shigaraki becoming the dominant personality is very interesting because it seems like All For One has actually lost his grip, which we've seen coming over time. The constant power struggle between Shigaraki and All For One has been going on since they became one and All For One's personality started coming through further. In the next chapter, we start off in the Task Force HQ with some of the workers speaking, saying the evacuation system is down. Signal interference is preventing contact. La Brava says, I'm remembering something from my days as a shut-in. Just for practice, I once wormed my way into a Good Feeling Inc. server and replaced the ads with, what is it? Optic Kitty? Yeah, the code's functions are wildly long and the scope of the variables are nuts. I gotta say, your coding habits haven't changed much since then. As she then speaks to Skeptic, he freaks out saying, that was you? We took a massive hit back then. La Brava then says, oops, my bad, as Skeptic continues to freak out saying, the pump dance, make it stop. And the cat faces seem to take over all of his screens. He then says, she's taken over every single one of my systems. I won't relinquish UA or the evacuation systems, those two most accursed ones. As he tries to escape his lab, he then thinks to himself saying, you've pinpointed my location, haven't you? If I flee, you still lose. The flames of revolution won't be doused. As then we flash back to the UA fortress as it's falling out of the sky. They state that they're losing altitude and dropping fast. The UA fortress is hurling towards the ground and it won't stop. One of the workers speaks to La Brava saying, hurry up, do something. She responds saying, the systems got wrecked by that last impact. I'm trying to code a brand new program that will allow the surviving circuits to keep the joint in the air. But she says there's not enough time. As then one of the workers thinks to himself saying, we should have known it was a bad call to leave our final key line of defense to a convicted villain in custody. He then states that a crime is a crime and we can't erase the past, but it's not always a lost cause. We go back to the battlefield with Deku versus Shigaraki as Shigaraki keeps talking saying, I am your villain. I don't care if you don't understand. That's what makes us heroes and villains. Mandalay then says, we've lost control. Prepare for a crash landing as Kaminari and the rest of the heroes try to escape the UA fortress, but there are a bunch of Twice clones exploding out of the fortress. Kaminari then yells out, Sensei, as he sees Eraserhead falling from the UA fortress. As the UA fortress falls, we see what looks to be Gentle Criminal floating in the air. We then quickly flash to a panel of Skeptic being intercepted by some heroes as they say, we were given a heads up on your location, Skeptic. It made sense since we were in the area to stop by and pick you up. La Brava then yells out, you've got this, as the camera pans toward Gentle Criminal saying, naturally, this is the least I can do for the boy. We then go to the next panel and it says, almost a month and a half ago at Mikuzu prison after the assault on Tartarus. Villains escape and we see Muscular saying, with this, you're all free. Your lives are your own now. Do as you wish. As the villains then say, we're free? You really mean it? I ain't dreaming? As then the villains yell out their intentions, seeming like they're gonna go back to their old ways, Gentle Criminal then gets in the way and asks them, is this truly what you desire? He thinks back to some advice he got from one of the detectives. The only people who say they can't turn their lives around are the ones who have no real desire to. They're too impatient. They want results right away. Gentle Criminal thinks to himself, I dash headlong down the wrong path without the courage to restrain myself. The villains run after him answering his questions saying, damn right is what we want to do, you moron. And then Deku's words echo throughout Gentle Criminal's head saying, I want to be the guy who can show them all a brighter future. As he opens his eyes, it pans back to what's going on right in front of UA. As he raises his hands in the air, he says, I thought that only our being together would bring me joy. We then go back to the scene at the prison. They state that 7 prisons came under attack, but only 1 had no escapees. As the man who gave Gentle Criminal the advice says, what is it that you want, Tobita? Gentle Criminal says, I only wish to see La Brava. And 2, as then it pans to a picture of La Brava and Gentle Criminal saying, absence makes the heart grow much fonder. Labrava then talks to Gentle saying, I'm as greedy and stubborn as they come, you know, and your joy brings me loads more happiness than my own, Gentle. We then skip to another panel where it looks like Gentle Criminal has made a trampoline the size of the UA Fortress to catch it, as it states, gently super lover. He then thinks to himself saying, tell me boy, do you once again find yourself fighting for the joy of others? On that fateful day, I only wish to save one person who had fallen. Mandalay then yells out, we're saved? But how? It's like a trampoline made out of air. As we skip to Deku and he thinks, what? An air trampoline? He instantly knows, Gentle. And Gentle says, yes, to be a service to others is my hope. One of the users of One for All who used Black Whip says, bad news kiddo, the balance is broken. He's starting up again. We're not in free fall anymore, but the second his hand touched the ground as he's interrupted from a bullet shot hitting Shigaraki's hand. This is Lady Nagat's bullet, one of the officers with Labrava. He says, no matter how far they're falling, each villain is still a human being. He then states, it's up to us to recognize that about them. We absolutely have to. To borrow a phrase from a friend, deep within each of their hearts will find their starting point, their origin. As then we get a cool panel of Lady Nagat aiming her rifle at the UA Fortress. The reveals in this chapter are really good because we knew based off of the last chapter that Gentle Criminal was going to make an appearance. We just didn't know how. I didn't think Gentle Criminal had it in him to try to save the UA Fortress. Like initially when it started falling, I had no idea that Gentle would be the person they would bring back in, but it makes sense because when Deku came into contact with Gentle Criminal, he did seem like he was making him have a change of heart. Basically his Talk no Jutsu is coming back around full circle to basically change the hearts of the villains he's come into contact with, and now they're taking action. But Labrava only take action because Gentle Criminal took action, so that makes sense. Finding out that Labrava is the one who got into Skeptic's servers is actually very funny, because Skeptic claims to be the most technically skilled person in My Hero. Like he flaunts his intellect so much to the point where it seems like he has no superior, but the fact that Labrava is his rival is hilarious. I do like the fact that Shigaraki is taking the time to talk to Deku, not necessarily have a conversation, but taking the time to acknowledge him, because Shigaraki, even though he hates the world, Deku trying to stop him, he takes a lot of joy in opposing Deku. I like the fact that Horikoshi is really feeding into this heroes and villains, this rival mentality between Deku and Shigaraki, because essentially their ideologies come from the same story, the story of a hero, what makes a hero and what makes a villain, but they're on completely opposite sides, which is very interesting. They make that very clear. With the Twice clones taking over the UA Fortress, I believe it has no choice but to fall, but I do like the way they introduced Gentle Criminal, because the fact that even after he was released, he had that change of heart to oppose those villains and also succeeded in not letting a single one escape. He conquered his fear of not knowing where he stands. He's picked a side. Lady Nagat making an appearance is actually something that was hinted to a while back. I knew that Lady Nagat was going to make an appearance. I just didn't know how, because once Lady Nagat escaped Tartarus, she did oppose Deku, but being that Deku was able to talk to her after defeating her, also Hawks was able to talk to her. She initially had a change of heart, but All For One basically made it to where her body exploded and she was immediately put into a hospital. But based off of Deku's conversation with her, he asked her to stand by them, so it makes 100% sense that she would be there. Also, the fact that she shot off one of Shigaraki's hands is huge. Even though he has his quirks now so he can regenerate, just like the second user of One For All said, each second is precious. So she's giving them some well-needed time to think what their next move is. And the next chapter, we go back to the Central Hospital after Kurogiri's escape happened. The doctors say, get the wounded inside. Quickly, the rain is picking up. Friend or foe, it doesn't matter. One of the doctors then speaks to Lady Nagat saying, not so fast. Being up and about will rip open your wounds. It could be fatal, as she then says, I don't care. Tell me where the villains are. The doctor then states, tell you, an escaped convict, no chance. But Lady Nagat rebuttals saying, Izuku Midoriya asked me to do this. He asked me to fight alongside him. Rocklot then intervenes saying, let her go, I'll take full responsibility. He then hands her cell phone saying, here, use this to keep up to date with the details such as UA's location and the enemy position. He says, listen, Lady of the God, ultimately this full mobilization on our part hinges on our faith in Izuku Midoriya. If your heart's telling you to take action for that kid, then I'm choosing to trust you. As we get this really cool panel of Lady of the God sitting in a sniper's pose with the wind blowing against her back and blood flying everywhere, she thinks to herself, I've still got one more shot left in me, and every single one counts. As stated before, everything the hero's doing right now counts because the villains are so powerful. The heroes are basically running on fumes, so they need everything to go perfectly to win. She then states, Dark Sky, I'd been stained by the darkness and lost faith in the light until you and my successor came and reminded me of how I felt back then, with my bright and shining hope and my reason for being. Now let this reach you, Izuku Midoriya, from Lady Nagant, as she fires another shot towards Shigaraki. As he tries to touch the ground, his other hand flies off, and we can see light enter Deku's eyes again as he starts to move. We then look inside the vestige of Shigaraki and we see All For One. It looks like he's just exploding with blood spilling everywhere, and then in one of the panels, like, he has hands coming out of his mouth. All For One then says, that despicable trash. After murdering her fellow heroes, she plays the victim like some noble agent of justice. She's a pathetic pushover drifting wherever the wind blows. As then Shigaraki laughs inside of him saying, haha, manipulating her feelings and history didn't work, huh? Yes. Look at you now. That's what happens when you stick your hands where they don't belong. The same goes for the way you groomed me, using Shimura and All Might push my buttons like that. All to move ahead with your plan of hijacking my body and soul, to make use of my burning rage and take one for all for yourself. But guess what, Master? I wasn't a fan of that scheme. So I hid my own core deep down inside my soul. As we then see Tenko Shimura with the hands surrounding him, and he starts to get up, but his hair starts to change color. He said, bit by bit, without you noticing, I started to reclaim myself from the inside out, helping my origin follow that path. Okay, this is very interesting because initially we thought that the image of Tenko Shimura was actually Tenko being a third personality outside of Shigaraki and All For One, and maybe Tenko was going to be able to be reasoned with. But it looks like now that the Tenko Shimura that we saw deep within Shigaraki was actually Shigaraki's origin. So it seems like Tenko and Shigaraki are actually the same individual, which they always were, but I mean like psychologically. Every action outside of All For One's manipulation that Shigaraki took seems to be his own. So him hiding his soul inside himself so that All For One can't touch it was Tenko Shimura. That's interesting. I didn't expect that. I really didn't. All For One then yells out, Kurogiri, I'm not in control of this body. Stop gawking and warp me to All For One. As we then see a glimpse of Shirakumo's face, but it seems like Shirakumo's personality is starting to break through just in time to not allow Shigaraki All For One to go to All For One. It's interesting because, like, I understand that Shirakumo's personality was the weakest, so it makes sense that Kurogiri would have initial control, but the fact that he's fighting back now, I'm very curious to see where this will lead us, because initially I did think that Shirakumo would become the dominant personality, but it seems like he's just now coming to effect. So I do hope that that is what's going on. We then snap back to Shigaraki and he says, I've got no need for one for all. Did you think you had everything under control? I won't be your stinking pawn. As then he bursts through One For All's vestige saying, unlike those flip-flopping screw-ups, my heart ain't wavering. Everything I witnessed in this world of ours led to the existence of that house. As Tenko Shimura and Tomoe Shigaraki, I've got one hope, the destruction of everything stemming from that house. As he then falls out of the sky and he's smiling. Okay, so it seems like those personalities are the same. It's like he's accepted being who he is. The reason he wants to destroy everything is because of everything he experienced in that house. Like everything he's experienced outside of it, he feels led to the creation of that house which tells why he hates heroes, also why he doesn't care about what All For One wants. He wants to destroy everything. He has to destroy that house to basically become whole. That's what it seems like. I really do like this panel. Seeing Shigaraki smile is very interesting in this manner because even though it's weird and creepy, it does seem genuine. We then get this cool panel of Shigaraki and Deku falling as he says, "That's the only thing that's gonna save me, hero." In this time, Deku actually managed to get Shigaraki off the UA fortress. We then see Gentle look towards Deku as he says, "Boy, is that you?" Deku then thinks to himself, "Now that Shigaraki's got his quirks back, I can't afford to fight him atop the tomb. I can't let you do that, but still, I also can't pretend I didn't see you crying in there." As we get another cool panel of Deku and Shigaraki on the ground and the UA fortress still being held up by the trampoline in the background. I like this panel a lot because it really gives you like an overall view of everything. It shows Deku's taking his last stand. I think this is where it's gonna be. His last stand, and he has Shigaraki's hands binded on the ground, but it shows Shigaraki in like this creepy monster-esque pose where you can't even see his face. So it helps you kind of relate him to a monster. And he's bent over looking directly at Deku, which is super creepy. See, this chapter is more of what I was looking for because we get explanations for why Lady Nagant is here. Her making her sacrifice, I'm not gonna lie to you, with the amount of blood that Lady Nagant is losing, she might die, but still the fact that she's willing to sacrifice herself for Deku, I think is incredible. Also, it's good to see that One For All is finally losing his control over Shigaraki because this is gonna allow Shigaraki and Deku to go all out, and I think this is where we're gonna see the majority of quirks that Shigaraki has. I don't think One For All is going to make it to Shigaraki. I think he's gonna be done in the Ganga Mountain Villa ruins, but I don't know by who. I think there has to be one more intervention, and I have a prediction, right? It can only be two characters, one or two characters. It can either be Overhaul, maybe he got rewound and he has hands again, because after we saw Overhaul with Lady Nagant, he seemed broken, like he gave up on the world. But after we saw that, we haven't seen him at all, right? But we know he's gonna make another appearance, just not for what. It can either be him, where he comes full circle and he also gets converted. But if it's not Overhaul, I think All Might might make an appearance at the Ganga Mountain Villa ruin. I think we may get a chapter where the big three, the OG big three, All Might, Endeavor, and Hawks battle it out against All For One. That's my prediction. I want that to happen so bad because All Might needs a last run, but also like I think Deku needs All Might to make an appearance just so he can get that second wind. Like I don't think Deku could handle anything else going on right now except for focusing on Shigaraki. He has to focus on his battle because his battle is the most important. But it would be so dope if we can get Endeavor, All Might, and Hawks to team up against All For One. That would be amazing. But I also really like the fact that Shigaraki, he had something up his sleeve. Shigaraki has always seemed like the kind of character that doesn't really have a plan, he just acts. But this shows that he actually plays the long game because he had one singular focus: to destroy everything that stems from that house, which in turn technically does involve everything else. He wants to destroy the world around him because the world around him allowed that house to exist. But it shows that he didn't waver against that plan. He just gained power to make that plan a reality. In the next panel, we flash back to Gentle Criminal thinking to himself, my elasticity has almost stretched to its limit. Not to do with a lack of love, but rather my own limitations. And LeBarber then says to him, hang in there, Gentle. Give me a minute and I can upload a new program that'll keep the schoolhouse in the air. Gentle Criminal then continues to think to himself, saying, it was nearly too swift to glimpse, but I dare say that was that boy I just saw. Does his departure point to the faith he has placed in me here? No, I suppose not. He wouldn't be aware of my participation. No cameras, no audience. Only the joy of being alive and present I feel in my heart. As he then sees a flash from the UA Fortress. Cameras? And audience. He then yells out to the business course students saying, do not risk your necks. Hurry yourselves inside. As one of the students says, that one is a villain supposedly in custody, and yet he's the one holding up the tomb right now. Heed me, won't you? I'm not doing my utmost, so please get inside. They tell him to shut up, saying, let us film. We're also doing our utmost. When Japan was falling to pieces, the nation placed its entire burden on Endeavor. That day, we should have been documenting and curating the whole saga saga, and it should have secured the link between heroes and society, but we couldn't. So now we film to reforge that link. This is how the business course does its heroics. Gentle Criminal thinks to himself, incredible. To think I once sought to infiltrate this astonishing educational institution. One of the students yells out, he says, my phone has a mind of its own? It's offering an option? No, wait, I can't control it. I've been hacked? Is it a villain? This is La Brava. She says, since UA's electromagnetic barrier is on the fritz, I'm able to hack my way into your devices. One of the officers then says, what are you doing? You have to save UA. She says, oh, that action item's already taken care of. I'm already on to the next task. She then states, keep filming, heroes. Imagine Gentle going to all this trouble and having nobody to see it. He must have made his peace with it, but I can't say the same. As she then presses what looks to be play, the UA Fortress boosters start to activate. As Gentle then says, the load lightens. Huzzah to you, La Brava. We see the Twice clones holding onto one of the cables saying, every last hero's gonna die. And then we see Kurogiri still having trouble keeping himself together, saying, I am protector of what? As Aizawa and President Mike fall off the UA Fortress, Monoma and Kaminari yell out, Sensei, no, as they go through one of Kurogiri's portals. Kaminari then states, he saved our teachers? Mandalay thinks to herself, Ori has moved the race from the playing field. Nothing helps out Shigaraki more than that. Whatever the case, all we can do is have faith in our fight for everyone's survival and victory, and for Midoriya. We then go back to the Ganga Mountain Villa ruins as All For One then thinks to himself, my original scheme was for him to become me in his entirety. Melding minds to Tomura to create an entity altogether was never in fact plan A. He then says, granted, Tomura's impulsion for destruction eclipsed all of my hopes, but that is a minor detail. Now that this body's role is done, injecting my quirk factor into Tomura will broaden my authority and put a lid on him. We then see a panel of Hawks rushing towards All For One saying, you ain't reaching Shigaraki on my watch. Our future's on the line for the sake of the kids. None of it's for you to chew and spit out. To go further beyond, towards a future so bright, they can't help but smile. As he takes a swing at All For One, but it looks like he whiffed his hand, and it looks like his feathers are starting to push the blade after his hand to trick All For One into getting hit. But All For One then says, the wind seemed to blow in my favor, as he then attacks Hawks, basically like disintegrating his body. Tokoyami then looks distraught as he was watching Hawks in the All For One fight, but then Hawks' face looks, I don't even know how to describe this, but he's making like a glamorous face. And then we hear someone say, totes an illusion for reals, as Cammy then appears saying, if I'd been a sec too late, you would have been unalive. That certified hottie I'm simping for, not very fetch of you, no cap. This is cool because it looks like the Shiketsu High students are on the scene, which is also expected but unexpected. I didn't see that coming, as one of them says, as the faction receiving refugees from UA, we were designated as purely non-aggressive defensive force. However, the refugees have not yet arrived. He says, since we've deduced the imminent danger and the impeding reunion, we took it upon ourselves to assemble the Shiketsu High Hero Corps and assist you in battle. As then the wind student from Shiketsu High says, listen up, pal, I'm the guy who decides which way the wind blows, as he then blows the majority of the Twice clones across the sky. This is basically perfect for what the heroes need, because the wind guy himself is pinnacle right now, being that he controls all of the wind in the area. He has a quirk that can handle the threat the Twice clones are opposing. I like that a lot, because even though he's from Shiketsu and they didn't really make him seem as important, he's one of the strongest characters in the show to me, because his power is basically limitless. If he can go all out on a battlefield, he can do whatever he wants. So I really like that. I'm very excited that he's here, because I'm curious of how he's going to impact the war. I like the fact that in this chapter we get to see basically how the importance of what each character is doing, nothing seems to be left out. The fact that the business course students can also be there to show that villains are making a change, it's very important, because no one would know what La Brava is doing outside of the police force. The fact that the business course students can show that Gentle Criminal has made a change and that he's saving the UA Fortress is going to be big when they present it to society. Also, being that La Brava is making it to where people are going to see this, she put it live on the internet. So this is going to be huge. I'm very curious of what's going to happen in the next chapter once we get to Aizawa, Shirakumo, and President Mike. I don't know if there's going to be a battle between these three because I don't know if anybody else is taken with them, but I think their story is one thing I'm most interested in right now, because I want to see how their friendship pans out afterwards. I really want Shirakumo to come through, but I don't see how it's gonna be just like a talk no jutsu type deal. I really like this panel between Hawks and All For One, because we all know Hawks is a good fighter, but I really like the fact that he had the mental prowess to basically make All For One lean with that whiff, but then also have it to where his feathers were pulling the sword after his hand for another swing. That was really cool. But of course, All For One isn't just taking that lane down, blowing him into bits. Tokoyami had his heart broken, and then he was like utterly confused. He didn't know what was going on, so I feel bad for him in that regard. But I love the fact that Horikoshi took the time to draw this little like cartoony configuration of him right here because of his shock. That's funny. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens in the next chapter. The Shiketsu High students, once again, I think gonna make a big difference, especially the wind guy. But I still think I'm gonna stamp that there's gonna be one more appearance, and I really hope that it's All Might. I like the fact that also it seems like the scales are tipping. The heroes are actually getting some assistance and they're taking steps towards victory. I really like this. But yeah, that'll be the end of the stream. Tell me down in the comments below what you thought about the chapters, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Luminary Grand signing off. Peace.